Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dancing with Damage. I'm Archie, the corgi.
And I'm Gray, and I'm off screen.
Gray, come here, buddy. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm Gray, and I want to do the intro too. Today we're going to be talking about fertility. Is it good or bad that the rates are dropping in a lot of places? Mama, is that what we're talking about?
It might be.
So, this is a sort of a fun topic we're going to do with the dogs here. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And we're still talking about fertility, but we have our dog friends here with us, and we are very glad that they were born. But Abby, we were watching a show recently by a popular late night host, and they were talking about how low fertility in America was sort of an issue and that birth rates are declining. Now, if people were to say, you know, what's the downside of fertility declining? Starting with the vantage point of the Earth having like 8 billion and change people right now kicking around. Mm-hmm. But what do people say is an issue with declining fertility?
It's so much dog.
It's a lot of dogs.
Great, please go lie down. Go lie down, love. Please go lie down.
No, that doesn't mean come over here. Okay.
Can you ask me the question again,
You
please?
taste like kibble.
Can you ask me the question again, please?
So the question is, great, go lie down. I know you know how. You stay.
Chaos.
Great, go lie down. No. Great. That's not.
He's like, I have to sit with mama.
Go lie down somewhere. The question is declining fertility a negative thing, a positive thing? The person we were listening to, the personality we saw on the show was saying it was a negative thing, and why would they have been saying that?
Because this is a different topic, but just to touch on it, our economic structures in the modern world are largely based upon an ever-expanding population, which is not stable because it's been known for 40-ish years very clearly that the world cannot sustain the population we had 40 years ago, let alone a growing world population, because it is expanding, it is growing. I didn't know we hit 8 billion. Have we officially reached that mark?
I think so. I think it's 8 and change.
Wow.
Corgis
What
are
is
ultra.
happening?
I don't know, but I think corgis might be slinkies. All right, why don't we just lower you down here?
Good work, Betty.
Okay.
But the problem is, if we couldn't sustain the population 40 years ago, and we already have a significant portion of the world's population who are impoverished, who are hungry, who are without clean drinking water, then adding more people to the population makes those finite resources thinner. And also the increase of population using land to build homes, because people need homes to live. And that's currently a crisis in many countries. Mm-hmm. Often, the only land left is the arable land you need to make food. So we have an increasing population, a decreasing supply of resources to keep those people at a basic level of health. And then on top of that, to exacerbate it, as I've mentioned in the past, we're losing farmland that we need. So we're cutting down our resources even more. So it has been pretty widely known that our economic structures based on an increasing population is terrible. It's not sustainable. And my personal feeling is that the governments have sort of made it our problem instead of trying to think of a new way to keep society functioning and our economic policy functioning. They're saying, well, you just have to have more kids. We just have to bring more people into the country. And unfortunately, there's a point where that's not going to work anymore, and I think we've hit it.
Yes, it reminds me of like if two people had a ball.
Like a ball like a dance, or a ball like a physical bouncy ball?
Oh, a ball like a dance would be fun, but no, just like a ball.
Okay.
And one person is like, there's a grenade in the ball. We have to throw this away as far as we can. And the other person's like, no, inside the ball is gold and excellent things. We need to keep the ball. And that's like how in society right now, there's kind of a debate between whether there should be more on a higher birth rate. And those are like the people who want to keep the ball. And then another group, like Abby's talking about, are trying to say, this is a grenade, get it far away from us as possible. So we're going to talk about that today. First, we're going to talk about what is happening with these creatures, Abby. Did you feed them some beans or something?
No. So Archie's been getting the tiniest piece of turkey every day. And he hasn't been allowed anything but basically kibble for a few years now. So I think he's possessed with the spirit of the turkey ghost.
Ah, it's turkey essence. Yes, that's a common phenomenon. Most people when they eat turkey get sleepy. I actually don't know if that was debunked, that tryptophan in turkey myth, whether it actually makes you sleepy or not. Whatever it does to humans, it turns Archie into a
Maniac.
Tasmanian devil. And then that amps up Gray, the shepherd, as you saw. He gets stressed because he's like, what's going on with the little one? It's acting like 3 little ones.
That's how Ian refers to me sometimes too.
That's right. You don't know who I'm referring to. So, yes, and Abby has hit the nail on the head. The traditional argument for keeping that population increasing and always increasing the birth rate is the idea that the taxes of the working class should be able to support people as they get older. And so there always needs to be more people working than there needs to be seniors. Now, right now we're seeing a massive wave towards more seniors, less working class. And so the fear is those seniors and their pensions and different benefits that they rely on the working class to provide for them are going to evaporate. And that seems to be the impetus for encouraging a higher birth rate. Now, on the other hand, we have the warning to humanity that the scientific community put out in 1992 and 2017, basically saying too many people is a ecological disaster in and of itself. The simple fact is carbon footprint, especially of individuals in developed countries, like Canada, less so in developing countries, is more dangerous than anything else. So we need to decline the birth rate. And so I'll make another metaphor for you, Abby. Have you seen the movie Titanic?
Yes.
You roll your eyes. You don't like this movie?
I hated it.
Why?
So I'm probably the one person who didn't like the movie. I'd never seen it. And then when I was in high school, they re-released it in theaters for a short while. And I didn't know the movie was like 3+ hours long. And I really had to pee by halfway through. And my friend would not let me go because she was like, you can't miss a second of this movie. And there was no intermission. They cut that out in the theater I was at. So I was rooting for the iceberg. I'm pretty sure it took longer in the movie for the boat to sink than it did in real life. Again, I am not for natural disasters. I just did not like the movie. I don't like tragedies. I'm annoyed at the door thing. You know, it wasn't for me. It's not my kind of movie.
Sounds like you didn't have a very good friend with you who wouldn't let you go to the bathroom. Now, were you watching it in theaters?
Yes.
There is no pause button in the movie theater. Well, that is too bad. I obviously I've watched it. I would say Titanic is probably one of the most watched movies for the generations that are alive today. Like, I'm trying to think of someone I've met who's been like, no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's one of those very popular, very beloved movies, and I can see how it's beloved. I am just apparently the one person it was not made for, and that's fine. I'm okay, you know, being the one person who didn't like it.
I didn't rewatch it, as far as I know. I didn't have a particular attachment to it. But I guess it's an interesting story, and it's useful for my metaphor because a lot of people have seen it. So, here comes Titanic. Doo-doo. Doo. This is the iceberg. Doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Now, I'm mixing up Jaws music and Titanic to really drive home the nostalgia. And so the point is, it would be like talking about fertility versus encouraging it and not encouraging it, would be like if the people before they hit the iceberg, the people on the deck were like, keep going. And the people all down below in the cabins, all the many, many passengers say, whoa, Captain, like, turn the ship. We don't hit the iceberg. And the few people on the deck who had a really nice view of the water were like, no, this is a very scenic, I want a picture next to the iceberg. Just stay on the course. It's nice for us. And, you know, we'll probably not sink. We'll probably get into the lifeboats. We'll be fine. That's a bit what it's like when you hear the argument for increasing fertility, because it's a very small group of people, a very privileged people who have those benefits and security in their old age that are simply, in my view, in our view, I would say, clasping and holding on to that privilege to the detriment of all the other passengers on the ship, the many, many more who have yet to come. So in the same way, the captain would hopefully turn the ship and not listen to the people on the deck. the same way we would argue in the social blueprint philosophy that increasing fertility is a negative thing, and the trend it's currently on right now is a very positive thing.
And just to throw this out there, I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. Something that no one has seemed to consider. So, as you very well established, the current taxpayers are supposed to pay for the old age security or the pensions of those who have retired. And I think it is fair that if you have retired, a lot of people don't have savings, which is a different problem altogether. But it does make sense to make sure those who have retired in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, if they're lucky, hundreds, have the ability to not perish prematurely because they just don't have money to survive. That's not tenable. We can't do that. However, currently, the young population who is trying to get a job, to establish themselves, to make money in order to pay in taxes the salaries and the pensions of those who have retired are dwindling. There has been a mass, just today, another mass of like hundreds of thousands of jobs across the US for different major companies, including Disney, including Nestle, where they're firing people because they're saying they're switching to AI for some jobs, or there's some scuttlebutt that the companies are actually just using AI as an excuse because every company's doing it as a way to sort of lay people off who they just might not need. They just might not need these positions anymore. So we have a crisis right now where young to middle-aged people are losing their jobs, are not able to find jobs. Those in retirement are having to come out of retirement because pensions are not enough to actually sustain just a basic poverty level wage anymore. So they are coming back or not leaving the job force. That stops younger people from being able to get jobs. And the situation is so dire. There's actually a surge in young people who are saying, what's the point? Because in Canada, we do have welfare, which I think is between 1 to, depending on if and how many children you have, several $1,000s a month. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, and they're saying, you know what, I get X amount of money to just spend however I want. That's all I need. A lot of young people are starting to say, I just need internet and a phone or a TV, and I'm okay with my existence being virtual. So there is an increase, and I think we will argue a crisis in the future of young people just not even trying to get into the workforce because it looks so dire. The situation is so unstable. I mean, why would you bother working hard to try to find a job when there's people who are posting every day online that they've been searching for a year, 2 years to find any job, even at fast food restaurants, and they're turned down? We've made it so even if the population continued to increase at the level economics desires, there aren't any jobs or the will to work in some cases for young people to make the money and pay the taxes. So now we're getting to a point where the elderly are needing money to pay their pensions. The young people are sort of relying on welfare either intentionally or unintentionally. And we have a shrinking middle who are just trying their best.
Yeah, about the next generation probably looking at social assistance as a profession. It sort of reminds me if there was like a group of people in a forest, let's say, and always the group of people has hunted. Let's say they hunt. What's a delicious thing to hunt?
Turkey.
Oh, I should have guessed this. And so generation after generation, these forest people have hunted delicious turkey. And then recently the turkeys have started being sparse. And so the options are kind of spend all your energy, run around looking for these turkeys and probably not finding one, or sitting at home and you can sort of eat acorns and rats or squirrels or whatever.
I thought you were going to say get a chicken and just eat the chicken's eggs because
No.
it's protein but less delicious than meat. And you're like, no, acorns. I don't even know if humans can eat acorns. I don't know if they're digestible.
I think you have to like grind them up into maybe a flour. Anyway, you certainly can't blame the group who's going to say, you know what, sure, acorns and, chipmunks are not as delicious, but at least it's something, and better that than me running around trying to get these non-existent turkey. So Abby's right. The world's really getting it from both ends. But my comment on that would be, Abby, why don't you weigh in on this too? I mean, so we're in our 30s.
Yes.
I'm 36. You are 32.
32.
32, but don't hold up your fingers because then you become 34. That is how it works. And
Wait, no, I'm not. I'm 31.
no, you're 32 now. It's too late.
I'm going to be 32 this year. Sorry, I just had a moment where I was like, wait a second. I am 31 and I'm born at the end of the year, so I am 31.
You know, age is a funny thing because it's one of the only things that without some sort of chemical test, you really are relying on other people to tell you how old you are. You know what I mean?
We ask each other how old we are all the time.
No, but like if your parents wanted to play a prank on you, they could totally just say, yeah, you were born like 2 years after you were or before you were. We skipped you ahead in school or held you back or whatever. Like, how would you know? You don't remember the first couple of years. You can't prove them wrong.
And to be honest, like what just happened accidentally, they could just be like, Abby, you're 33 this year. And I'd be like, probably. No, I'm 31, but I could be 33. I don't know. I just feel kind of just in my 30s. It's all kind of a blob.
It'd be like if the 100-meter race, the first couple steps you were drunk or like sleepwalking. And so you're like pretty sure you started at the 0-second mark. But then at the end, when they're like waving the flag, they're like, you did it in 15 seconds. And they're like, I guess, like, I don't know. So that's the problem with age. No, that's not the problem. So I'm 36, she's 31.
Apparently, he's 5 years older than me. I should be able to do 6 minus 5. That's some pretty easy math.
Yeah, you would think, but that's okay. So what I was saying is, I think in 20 years, when the generation that's being born now comes up to me and says, you know, Ian, you and your whole generation had it a lot easier than we did, we children that were born in 2020 or whatever. I would say, yeah, there's no question that Abby and my generation will have a much easier time with the milestones of our life, getting a house, having kids if we wanted them, having pets, having jobs, security, relative peace, relative rule of law. All these things are going to be astronomically higher than those born, you know, in 2020, for example. And so it's always funny to me that the generation that preceded us, the baby boomers, you never really hear that from that generation acknowledging, yeah, we lived in the golden age, really, where the stock market was doing very well. You know, you could buy a house with like 2 or 3 years of income, for example. There wasn't climate change hanging over everyone's head. Leadership was a lot less corrupt, all these things. And so all this to say is that Abby and I recognize that advocating for a lower fertility rate would cause suffering in the baby boomers in that generation that do rely on a working force to supply a lot of their quality of life. Our position is, unfortunately, just like those people on the deck of the Titanic, it's the lesser of two evils and the greatest good to focus more on supporting those who haven't had such a nice ride on the Titanic and those who are going to, you know, drown miserably versus those who might be inconvenienced on the deck.
And it's interesting because if we're using the Titanic metaphor, the majority of the population who is below the top deck, I don't know how many levels there were to the Titanic, but I presume more than 3. I think there were many. I've seen online pictures of cruise ships. They seem big.
Big ship.
I feel like they have lots and lots and lots of levels.
It was sad when the great ship went down. To the bottom of the husbands and wives, little children lost their lives.
This is so dark.
It was sad when the great ship went down. Oh, it was sad, so sad. Oh, it was sad. So sad.
What is this song? Why are
It
you
was
so
sad
happy to
when
sing
the great
it?
ship went down to the bottom. I don't know. I just suddenly we were talking about it, and I remembered this. I didn't make it up, obviously.
Why are you so happy to sing it? You're talking about people dying.
Well, everyone dies, but I'm just happy because I remembered it, and it's so jaunty. Like, who made that up?
Okay. Different point.
What were you saying before I
About
started?
the majority of the people under the ship or below the top deck. They're not under the ship. They'd be in the water.
Sorry, it's catchy.
But society is already moving towards either intentionally or otherwise lowering the fertility rate. And by fertility rate, we are specifically referring to the number of children born to the number of adults of childbearing age. And there have actually been news reports in the States where often very elderly newscasters are complaining that for the fertility rate, this is when I saw in the States, the fertility rate for 15 to 19-year-old girls has gone down 17%. And they were complaining about that. Those are teenagers. Anyway, different problem. But I find that society as a whole, either we're recognizing as a people that the job situation, the climate situation, the economic situation are so unstable, not to mention the political situation. A lot of people are opting to not have kids because they don't see a future where that child gets to live a full life, which I think is a noble thing to do. There are people who are saying, the social constructs which have so firmly grasped us for the past few hundred years, where it's sort of expected, it's only now I feel people are actually starting to question why. Because it was expected, you grow older, you get married, you find a partner, and you have kids. And that was sort of what you did. And it's only now that people are saying, wait, why should I do that? I don't actually want kids. And I think if people had asked that question over the last 50 years, there would probably be a lower population already, because I think I've met a lot of people, and you might have too.
I have not met a lot of people. You were the first person I met.
Who would honestly say, if they're being true to themselves, I love my kids, I obviously wouldn't go back and get rid of them, but if I could do it all over again and I didn't know them, I would choose to not have kids. I've had people say that to me. I've had a lot of people say that to me.
Yeah, they just line up. They know she's around and they're just like, look, it's time for me to come clean. We probably will do a whole separate episode on that. What I want to talk about a little bit is in the social blueprint, we talk about the concept of damage and how society is being self-destructive. And because the fertility rate is decreasing by and large, I mean, the population is still going up. You know, as it approaches 10 billion, that's going to be a big issue. But slowly, that metric is actually sliding towards the positive of decreasing the global population, which is an important thing for the future of humanity, as we've established. So you may say to me, and Abby, Ian and Abby, doesn't your book argue that society is destroying itself? So how can it be doing something positive for itself, even if it's not really aware of the concept of damage and all that? But here's how I would respond. I would say, first of all, we expect some measure of correct behavior, even from a generally damaged society, because as we predict in The Rat in the Corner, one of the chapters of the Social Blueprint, which is available conveniently where fine books are sold online.
And maybe in person? At least online. For sure online.
And in person. If you show up to any in-person place,
Maybe.
they'll just throw them right at you. So we argue that The Rat in the Corner, that's a metaphor about how the generation has come that's going to start resisting what technology has created. And we can't ignore the fact that the population basically exploded in the early 1900s. I always get that confused. 19th century is the 1800s and 20th century is the 1900s. Forget about that. Early 1900s, we had very productive medical advances, basically creating a system where it was very rare to die at childbirth, and the population just exploded from there as vaccines and everything took off. These are some things we want to keep, but we have to remember it was technology that brought us to this point in the first place. Without medical technology, we wouldn't have an overpopulation problem, most likely. Anyway, side issue. So here we are. The rat is in the corner. It's facing its attackers caused by unmoderated technology. And just like a person has a subconscious, a society also has a subconscious. And even if it's not realizing it, there is a group in society that's fighting back and not having kids, recognizing that's for the greater good. But interestingly, what I see is that the population that is continuing to have children is the more heavily damaged percent of the population. Because again, self-destruction causes self-sabotaging behavior within yourself and for the society in which you live. Although the birth rate's going down, the birth rate of unfortunately damaged people is going up even more exponentially. It's a very dynamic time for fertility. And that's why in the Social Blueprint, when we argue for a baby license and the Guardian Center, you can read all about that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check it out in the Social Blueprint. It will make sense. That would be the way to manage population growth and keep the population with a healthy psyche and not a self-destructive psyche.
If there's no intervention of any kind, unfortunately, we see an increase in people who don't have the financial ability to take care of children, who maybe have substance abuse problems, who are physically and or emotionally negligent or harmful to children. My mom actually, she wanted us to have kids, and I think she's got that we will not at this point. But one of her arguments to me was if only the people who should not be having kids, in her words, are having them, then the population is doomed, because eventually it's going to get to a point where 99% of the people alive are, quote unquote, the worst in society. So we have to sort of balance that.
Yeah, and we're not saying that everyone who has kids, after 2017, which was the second warning to humanity, or whenever you want to do the cutoff from, we're not saying that everyone who has kids, obviously, is a bad parent, or the kids are going to be damaged kids or heavily damaged kids. That's not the point. The point is that those who are opting not to have children in developed countries, when it's the expectation, it's the norm, these are the ones who are engaging in future thinking and thinking about others besides themselves. Having children in a world of overpopulation is, at its core, a rather selfish choice. So those who are abstaining from having children, and maybe one of the reasons is they don't want to raise a kid in a world where the child's going to have a low quality of life because of the factors that are crumbling around us. Those are the kind of people who make good parents, because good parents engage in future thinking and thinking about the kid first and not their own wishes first. Sort of like the same way, if you had a class of firefighters, and the instructor says to them, okay, we want you all to run into that burning building as our first exercise and see who you can save, or see what you can do. Maybe there's no one inside, maybe they just run inside the burning building, put out the fire. As a side note, I don't think firefighters go inside buildings to put out the fire.
Seems really dangerous.
This is a terrible example. Just work with me here, okay? Just for a second. But the firefighters in this scenario don't have any of their protective gear. They're just in t-shirts and, whatever else. But none of those fancy, like the tan coveralls that they always have. I don't know, they're probably fire retardant, and those hats. So they don't have those. So there's a group of them that say, well, this is a drill. I'm not running into the fire without my protective equipment. And there's a group of them that are like, heck yeah, and they rush in to the fire.
And then they were never heard from again.
So it's interesting that the group that didn't want to rush in would be the better firefighters, because they're thinking of the long-term consequences of their action. Again, this would be a drill in this scenario. And the ones that are rushing headlong in wouldn't make good firefighters, because they're not really being firefighter-esque. They're being reckless. And so this is the same metaphor you can apply to people generally, by and large generally, who are having kids after we know that the world is sliding towards disarray and climate change is creeping up. And that's what Abby and I mean when we say a lot of people having kids nowadays are perhaps not the percentage of the population that would be the very best parents.
I think my perception overall is that if we took away social pressure and social stigma and religious obligation and just actually let people internally look and be like, am I willing to make the sacrifices and understanding the risks, do my best to be a parent? I think about 50% of the relatively undamaged population would want kids. And I think that would be a sustainable figure. And I think right now, those couples or those individuals would have maybe 1 to 2, maybe a rare time 3 kids. That seems to be the range, but usually it's 1 to 2, But the heavily damaged population, it seems close to 100% of that group, regardless, will have kids. Often they start in their very young teenage years. And unfortunately, that group often averages, I would say, 4 or 5 children.
Yeah, that can be something we see a lot. So all this to say, fertility, it's just a statement. I thought it might have been a question. Fertility, that's the blackboard today. And we say, in line with the philosophy of the social blueprint, that a declining fertility rate is good, but a controlled declining fertility rate would be superior. And that is why we advocate for that in the social blueprint, which would reduce the most suffering and improve the chances of those in the Titanic, so we can veer away from that iceberg and still have a nice cruise to the other side of the Atlantic.
I feel like we should just play My Heart Will Go On to take us out. That's a great song. I do love that song.
Ah, see? She loved it.
I love Celine Dion.
She does love Celine Dion. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. This has been Dancing with Damage, episode 47.
7.
Abby has a periscope that allows her to see. Oh, maybe the submarine wasn't a submarine. Or I was going to say maybe the iceberg was a submarine, but then I said maybe the submarine was a submarine.
I think we're just hungry.
Okay, we've got to go. Thanks for tuning in with us. Catch you next time.
Have a great day.